I got a call from a prospective client this a few years ago. They were building a large industrial facility. It's a warehouse, large warehouse over in Tracy, California. And they built these particular warehouses all over the United States, and it was the same basic footprint, same basic building. And so they called up and they said, we need a unit cost. We're going to be putting a couple of these warehouses in your area, and we needed boundary topo, and we want a unit cost. I said, well, I need to know where the parcels are at. I said, I can't give you a cost if I don't know where the parcels are at. And they said, well, we're not going to tell you where the parcels are at because there's we don't want the local landowners to know that this big client is in town buying land for warehouses, because then the prices will go up. They said, well, if you can't tell me where the parcels are, I can't give you a cost. They're like, well, it's the same building. We build them all over the place. Can't you just give us a unit cost? I said, no, I can't. Every parcel's different, right? So that goes to just the reason I'm telling that story is it illustrates that in real estate, each piece of land is unique, and people from other industries sometimes try and apply this unit cost idea, and it doesn't really work well with real estate because every parcel of land is unique. That was the point I was trying to illustrate with that story. So I want to talk about why we can't always accurately forecast the cost of land development for clients. And so in this kind of typical scenario, I'm going to talk about, we've got a client that owns some land, and in most cases they want to subdivide and then build something. Could be residential, could be commercial, could be ag, different scenarios there, but the same basic premise. We've got a big piece of land, we want to turn it into smaller pieces of land, and then we want to build stuff on those smaller pieces and potentially sell. So the basic question they come to us and ask occasionally is, how much is it going to cost to subdivide and build? And what they're really trying to figure out with that question is, do we have a profitable land development project? So that's kind of the larger question. And we can't give people accurate predictions most of the time. We can't give them accurate predictions on what something is going to cost. The land development is going to cost. We can give them estimates, and we can give them, kind of a level of uncertainty in those estimates. Sometimes we can give them ranges, low to high. But I can't guarantee a client that I'm going to be able to 100% predict the cost to get a project subdivided, entitled, what they call entitled, and built. So why? Why is that? So I wanted to give you at least 3 reasons why it's very difficult for us to predict in advance with a large degree of accuracy or reliability what the exact cost of a land development project is going to be. So here's the 3 reasons. Number 1, the fees and regulations that apply to a particular development project are not always clear. That can be for a couple reasons. Sometimes just the rules themselves are confusing. So even if you can find the rules, when you find the rules and read the rules aren't always clear. Zoning is a good example of that. Building setbacks are a good example of that. I have some videos that talk about those specific things. The other problem that we run into is at times you're dealing with different agencies. Maybe you're dealing with some agencies at the city level and then some at the state level, or you might even have some federal agencies involved, and those different agencies don't always talk to each other. So there's usually not a one-stop shop where you can just go figure out all your costs. All those different agencies have their own rules and their own fee schedules and permit costs. And then sometimes even the departments within an agency aren't talking to one another. So we had a situation come up a month ago. A landowner was trying to build a garage in Copperopolis, a small town east of Stockton, and the building department was telling them one thing, but when we talked to the county surveyor, we found out something else that was completely different, and it tripled the cost of the permit. And that doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. So sometimes even when you're dealing with different folks in the same department, the same agency, you're not getting the same answer. So for those reasons, the regulations and the fees that apply to a land development project aren't always clear up front. The second reason we can't give rock solid estimates to the dollar of what a development project is going to cost is because we don't know what the conditions of approval are going to be on the project. So typically when you go in to get either approval for a subdivision or a building permit, there's going to be some conditions that you have to meet, things the agency is going to make you do. And those change project to project. Every project's a little bit different. Now, there are some agencies that work to try and make that fairly predictable, but every project's unique. And so because of that, the conditions of approval on every project are unique. It's almost like a fingerprint, It's almost that unique. And then again, you could potentially be required to do what they call off-site improvements as part of your approval. So now you're trying to build something off-site that's not even on your property, a sewer main or improving an intersection. And there could be conditions of approval that you have to meet to build those off-site improvements, and there could be permits and other things that you have to get to do the work off. It's not even on your property; it's on somebody else's property, on public property. So it very quickly can get confusing and complicated. And then the third reason why we can't always provide a rock solid accurate prediction of what costs will be for a land subdivision or land development project is we don't always know the site conditions until we've done some initial work. So we don't know what the access to the parcel is like. We don't know if there's land title problems on the parcel. We don't know if the existing or proposed land uses are conforming with the zoning. We don't know what kind of environmental issues might come up, if there's some kind of hazardous waste or contaminated soil or endangered species on the property. We don't know what cultural resources there might be. We don't run into that a lot, but there could be, historical or cultural resources that have to be protected and dealt with. We don't know what the soil conditions are like. What's the underlying geology that can have a huge impact on what you can build. We don't know what the flood risk is up front. That could be a challenge. So all those things can be figured out, but that takes time and it takes money to figure that out. So we can't always tell you right at the beginning of the project what all the costs related to those different issues are going to be because we don't know. Not only that, but we also at times have to look at the adjacent properties. So it's not just your property, but what's happening next door to your property. What are those land uses? What are those conditions like? Because that can have an impact on what you can build. So for all those reasons, we can't always provide a rock solid prediction of what costs are going to be up front. Well, nobody likes that. Nobody likes to hear that. Nobody wants that answer. What can you do? It's important to get a good idea of what the costs are, because costs are half the profit formula, right? You take your cost minus what your revenue is, what you think you're going to be able to sell or rent the land for, or lease the land for, and then whatever's left over is your profit. So if the cost side is fuzzy, that causes problems. So what can you do? Well, you can research and then analyze and provide the best estimates that you can. So what does it take to do that? You have to be persistent. You have to bird dog these public agencies that you're going to have to get approvals from to really understand what the requirements are. You have to be able to ask those folks the right questions, smart questions. They tell you, oh, here's all you need, but sometimes you got to drill down a little farther than that because they may not know, they may not understand. And you need to make sure you get clear answers. It's always good to get answers in writing. We try to do that whenever we're dealing with public agencies for a client, try and get their answers in writing. You'd be amazed at how many times we ask for an answer in writing and the public agency says, let us double check on that. So it's good to ask for things in writing. And then finally, you might have to do what we call a feasibility study, where you go in and you pay some money up front to answer a bunch of these questions so you can get a feel for what the overall costs are going to be before you go full bore into a project. And I'll do another video that talks a little bit about feasibility studies. So we try and provide our client with the best estimate that we can of what a land development project is going to cost, but you can't always predict those costs accurately up front. That's one of the challenges of being in the real estate development business.